were giving a seminar about healing. And he started off by saying, is there anybody here who's seriously ill, needs prayer? And a woman stood up and said she had cancer. So I said, okay. I had just been diagnosed with prostate cancer myself about 3 weeks before that. So I said, oh yeah, I have a problem too. And I started to walk up, and as I'm walking up to Ed, he said to me, hey, your right leg is shorter than your left leg. I had no knowledge of that. And he began to pray. My leg went out, stretched way out, and inadvertently went back into place as he prayed over me. It was amazing. And back pain that I'd had for a long time was gone. So then I asked him to pray over my prostate cancer too, and which he did. And I thought I was probably cured. So I went back to the Mercy Hospital, and I told them, I told all the nurses, I told the doctor, who was a good Orthodox Jewish guy, and he believed that I could have been healed. He didn't reject it. The nurses all believed that I could have been healed. And I asked for retesting, and they retested my PSA, which had been about 10.5, was down to 2. I thought, wow, this is, and they were all,
thank you, Lord.
They were all astonished at that. But Annette had been very careful about saying, you gotta, don't take these things gratuitously. Check it out carefully. So I asked the doctor to do an MRI, which he did do, and it turned out the cancer was there. It was still there. So then I had to pray about what to do about it. So I prayed, and I was told, get the briefest thing you can, which was external radiation at that time. I had it, that was about 11 years ago, and I'm okay.
Praise Jesus.
I'm okay.
Beautiful.
So then I began to get more involved in seeing what's happening with this healing business. Father Peter would never remember it, but he prayed on me, and I went down, slept in the Spirit, which was an amazing experience. I wouldn't even try to describe it, but it's an amazing experience for those people who have experienced it, and I guess everybody here probably has. So I began to try to pray for people in a team, always in a team, and I still pray for people in a team. And initially I would just say, try to ask, in the name of Jesus Christ, heal this person. And then I got involved with this prayer community called Christ the King Prayer Community, where you pray, you try to pray in tongues and ask the Lord what it is you want, what He wants to tell this person. I tried to do that, and then tried to get into the healing, whatever it is. And the other thing that I prayed, was part of a healing team at St. Ignatius, and then part of a healing team at St. Catherine's. And in the Christ the King prayer community, we pray over each other often. And I pray for people as often as I can, as often as I can. I had, this is kind of off the wall, but I had, my daughter was seriously ill. She had a back issue, and she couldn't find it. She's living in Florida, couldn't find a doctor. And I have another group that I belong to where a good friend said he was going to Israel. He would take any petitions that you have, and he would place them in the western wall of the temple for us. So I said, I'm a Catholic. You know, should I be asking this? I know it's the same God we pray to, but I had my doubts about what to do. at Christ the King Prayer Community, a woman's praying over me, and she says, "Oh, I see you're going to Israel. I see the Israeli flag. I see the Temple Mount." There's no way she could possibly have known
Incredible.
about that.
Wow.
So, needless to say, my daughter's name went into the Western Wall. Within a month, she had found a surgeon. She had surgery and totally recovered.
Praise the Lord.
There's more to that than that, but that's enough for me.
Wow.
I do
Thank you.
try to
Wow.
pray over
Yep.
people in prayer teams. I ask the Lord what it is He wants for them, and I'm an absolute firm believer, speaking for myself, that our family trees need healing. Family trees need healing. Back 3 generations, forward 3 generations.
Tell us a little about the forward 3 generations.
Praying for the forward generation. Well, I pray for my great-grandparents. I pray for my grandparents. I pray for my parents. I pray for my children, and I pray for my grandchildren. I don't have any
For
great-grandchildren.
the ancestral
I,
healing.
there's a big formal prayer, but my prayer is, I think, comes from my heart, simple. Heal all of the woundedness that's in that family tree. Heal all of the resentments that are in that family tree. Bring them forgiveness and break any bondage that's being passed down through that generation. Break it off and replace it with your love. Pray that as often as I can.
Harry, that's really what a story. A lot of stories there. We could talk forever about those stories.
Good.
Thank you. I wanted to say something that Harry, though, it brings to mind that's very, very important to emphasize with healing, that, you know, people say, well, I don't have a healing ministry, or I'm not special enough to pray for healing. What I want you to know is that as the grandfather, the patriarch, the mother, the father, the woman praying for her husband, the husband praying for her spouse, those bonds of sacrament, that covenant that you have as a family, really is so much more powerful than even if you went to the greatest healing minister that you could find and you stood on lines 2 hours long. It's actually more powerful, and the healing works so much more expediently when it's a family member, you know, praying, like a mother praying for her children, a father praying for her children. Harry's example of going over to his wife. I mean, he could have brought in the most wonderful, and they're all great, evangelical healer, you know, who has all kinds of stadiums filled with people. He could have brought that person into that funeral home, and it would not have come near what comes through our sacrament and our family lines. So that really came home to me, you know, when you're talking about the power that went into your wife. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara, too, for telling me that and telling everybody that, for that reminder.
Yeah, yeah, we all have a mandate. We have a mandate to pray for our families. It's not just, do you want to, do you feel like it, you know, am I up to, am I holy enough? It's not about that. Jesus gave us authority through his passion and death. He gave us a mandate to pray for one another. And this is an amazing example of that. Susan, do you have a healing story to share?
You know, something did happen recently, and it was with my husband. He's been going through a little bit of a rough time, but he's doing well. He's doing well. But he went out, so he came home. He had been in the hospital. He came home to run, and what happened was he fell that day. Same path he always takes, and he knows this little big curve is there, and he still took a fall. Came home, and that evening his leg just blew up. Really, it was really distorted. The knee above the leg, below the leg, really distorted. And he seemed a little shaky. And so I just paused for a minute. I sat next to him, and we just prayed in Jesus' name for the leg, all parts, all the blood, everything to go back as originally designed. And he seemed to quiet down a little bit, and we just both, drifted off to bed. And about 3 hours later, he got up in the middle of the night, and his leg was completely back to normal. Just completely. It looked like it was, Betty, from having your ankle, those kinds of falls, it could be a 2-week, a 6-week thing. This was a 4-hour thing. Praise the Lord.
Another great.
Praise the Lord. He's the healer.
A wife praying for her husband.
Yeah.
Love it.
I
love it.
It was an honor.
That's such an example also of Jesus' love for us, that he wants to heal us, and he did it right away for your husband. That's incredible.
Yeah. I just sort of drifted off to bed, and it was such a blessing when he woke me up to tell me. I put on the light and looked, and there it was, back in to normal. 30 years out in Wading River, Long Island, and we have an auction, and of course all the proceeds go to the healing ministry, or to the orphans, which they have in Uganda, or things going on, the healing going on here in the United States. To answer your question, you'll call the Bridge for Peace office. I happen to know the number. It's 631-730-3982. And then also you can go to bridgeforpeace.org.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Betty, how about your story?
I guess I go back quite a while. Beginning, I had many successive deaths early on in my lifetime, which really caused me to go on a journey. I was probably looking for consolation, and I found myself out in Steubenville many, many years ago, in the very beginning, probably in the early 80s.
Who had died, Betty?
Oh, just members of my family.
One after another?
Yes, one after another, successively. And I really was hurting and looking for the reality of the Lord in my life. I started questioning, are you really Lord? Are you really real? And as I said, it brought me to Steubenville to a conference that was on healing many years ago. And in the process, I learned that we are all expected to be healers, as Barbara just stated. It really isn't we don't have any particular power. It's allowing the Lord himself to just use us as he wants to use us, to be a vessel of healing, to pray for our families. And so I was into a conference, and it was a circle of people that were gathered, and Father Michael Scanlon, who just passed away recently, was leading the healing. And somebody pushed me into the circle closer, and then they started praying with this gal, everyone that was in the circle. And the person behind me just kept pushing me in and pushed my hand as though I was to just start to pray with the group. And I realized that the Lord was saying, I want you to be open to this. But I was reticent at the time, and wasn't so sure. As it would just happen to be, I found myself going to John Palmer's Mass at St. Aidan's in Williston Park on the last Friday evening of every month, and there was always someone who was invited who had the gift of healing. to pray with people, and I became committed to attending that Mass. And John Palmer, I knew quite well over the years, and he said to me, Betty, I want you to come to St. Ignatius, and we're going to start a healing team at St. Ignatius once a month to pray for people after the Mass, and I want you to be part of it. And I said, well, I have to pray about it to myself, but I knew that the Lord was moving me again, so I didn't want to be stubborn or disobedient or whatever word that I could think of at that time. So I said, yes, Lord, and I found myself going to St. Ignatius once a month. I was part of the team with Harry, and I found it an extremely beautiful experience. I received more each month than ever from just the humility of the people that came before us asking for prayer. And my heart was filled with just their simplicity and how the Lord was using them to touch me, even though I was to be the one praying. So it was just kind of an evolution for me, and it's been a tremendous gift to me in my life. I've received many personal healings over the years, and I just know that I keep walking, following as closely to the Lord as I can. Sometimes I feel like I'm running him after him all the time, but he's certainly leading me on a path, and it's been a great, great blessing in my life.
Oh, thank you, Betty.
Thank you.
That's a good story because it tells how, you were feeling kind of like out of it. You weren't like, oh, wow, let me be a great healer here. You were really feeling your own poverty of spirit, so to speak, your own weaknesses, and yet that's what the Lord used to draw you. And I think when you're telling the story, I'm thinking of the wounded healer,
Yes.
There's a great, great message in that, the wounded healer. I think that's kind of like what God uses our wounds, really, and right? We're so much more open to God's grace flowing through us when we've experienced it ourselves. And I think that's important for people to know, because a lot of times people will get an attitude, well, how come those people get to pray over people? And a lot of times people will say that, well, how did you get this job? But you got the job because you went through hell and you survived, and you came out the other end. That's how you get the job. Pat.
Okay, my story starts as a child. I was very lonely. My father got hit by a truck when I just had made my first communion, and he got hit by a truck right after that. And I felt like it wasn't fair because I was only 8 years old, and my mom really didn't know how to take care of me. I was an only child, and I really, really had a horrible childhood because I felt like something was wrong with me, that I had this kind of life. We never had company over. I was very lonely, very lonely.
Your father died, is that it, from the truck?
Yeah, he got hit by a truck.
He was killed.
Well, he lasted like 7 days in a coma.
I see, okay.
And
Praise the Lord.
but I really didn't get to see him again. My aunts wanted me to see him, but I didn't want to see him all hooked up to machines or whatever, so I didn't really get to see him. But I just felt like something was wrong with me, that I had this life, because my friends to me, they would seem like they have a nice life. They have families come over. We never had company, always alone. So I was very alone. And then I got into trouble because I wanted attention. I missed a father's love all my life. I always wanted a father. And I got into trouble when I was older, and I was rebellious. I was a rebellious teenager. And I took advantage of my mother. She was very nice and very sweet. And I took advantage of her. I always said, I want money for this, I want money for that. And we had no money. Very difficult. And then I got introduced to go to the Crescio. That was when I was much older. And I don't know if you ever heard of the Crescio. And it was a beautiful retreat. It was in Brooklyn on
Can you
Humboldt
tell
Street.
them a little tiny bit? Tell them a little tiny bit. Sorry, about the Crescio.
Crescio. It was somebody that I met at the YMCA, and she was telling, because she knew I was disturbed. I was very, very unhappy, very unhappy. And she said, there's a thing called, it's a retreat, and it's called Crescio, and it's about knowing yourself, finding out about yourself, and finding God in the midst of all your problems and your troubles. And I took the advice from a stranger. I'm very shy. People that know me think that I'm not shy, but I'm very shy. And I took upon myself, I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go on this retreat. And I went to Humboldt Street in Brooklyn with people I didn't know. I didn't know anybody there. And it was the most beautiful weekend of my life. I was roommate with this woman who was like a mother to me, who throughout the whole weekend and kept pointing out the good things in me that I never knew I had, because I thought I was just garbage. I thought that I was a curse. And she brought all the goodness out in me. I had people supporting me that I didn't even know, people praying for me that I didn't even know. They were praying ahead of time for the people that made this retreat. And at the end of the retreat, they gave you this button that said in the middle, I'm lovable. God doesn't make junk. And I wouldn't take it because I said, that's not right. I'm junk. I can't take it. And I wouldn't put it on. And then we had to go back to our room and get ready for the ceremony and stuff. And I don't know, between that hour that I was in the room with this woman and tears that were shed and sharing, I found out that I wasn't junk, that I was lovable. And I was able to put this pin on. And believe me, that was like monumental in my life. For me to put this pin on, I'm not junk. I'm good. I'm good. There's goodness in me. You know, I'm made in the image of God. But it took a long time for that to happen. And what a beautiful retreat it was. It was the best time of my life, other than having children. I love my boys. But from there on, and always prayer was an important part of my life, because even as a child, we were poor. We were on welfare. We had no money. I had that shame being on welfare. But my mother went to the parish priest and said, can my daughter go to this church? And we had no money to pay the tuition, but he took us in. That was St. Martin of Tours in Brooklyn. And I remember being in the processions, the May processions, and they asked me to be a leader, and you wore the crown, and then you put the rose petals when you went down. And those were moments that I felt God calling, God saying, I love you. But I didn't really pick it up then. I didn't pick that up until I was much older at the Crescio. But God was with me even back then, because I even found when I was scared, I would pray, and I would feel calm. And when I was in church, I always felt like church was home. Church was home. It was a safe place to be. But, you know, that was all along as I was growing up. So God was with me all the time. But I didn't realize it until I made that Crescio, that God was with me all along through all the bad times. I mean, my father, he was raised in an orphanage. His parents couldn't afford the kids. They put them all in a home, and they were all beat. So that's all he knew was beating. So when I was little, I got beat all the time, and I used to run under the bed and crawl into a fetal position to protect myself. I was so afraid, but he didn't know any better, because that's what he knew. That's what he knew as a child in the orphanage. So, but God was with me, because I would pray then, and that would calm me down. Always prayer. Prayer was an important part of my life, and it still is. I start my morning with prayer, and throughout the day I try to remember, pray. In the Bible it tells you to pray unceasingly, you know, throughout your day, not just when you're in church. I'm a crossing God. I pray on my crossing for everybody to be safe, that I get them across safe. I pray for, you know, throughout my whole day. I pray for my family. There's different struggles that go on in my family. They don't even know it, but I pray. I pray all the time. I bless my house with holy water when I can, because I feel like the evil one wants to destroy us. The evil one wants us to think that God doesn't care about us. God doesn't love us. When things go wrong, the evil one is right there. See, God loves you. He doesn't love you. But you have to just rebuke that and say, no, God does love me. Jesus suffered, so I'm going to have to suffer too. You know, and if I follow the steps of Jesus, I have to accept my suffering, and God will give me the grace and the strength to go through each cross that I have to carry. And believe me, it gets you through. And I love God, and I love the Blessed Mother. I feel like they're with me all the time, and my life has changed because of prayer. And I feel that because of prayer, I need to help other people to pray. So I met John Palmer. I love John Palmer, father figure in my life. I met him. He was like my spiritual advisor / friend slash therapist slash father. He meant the world to me. And every time I would go to him, we'd always start with prayer, and then we'd end with prayer. And anytime I had like a struggle, he said, let's pray about it. Everything went back to prayer again. If you're struggling, pray. If you're happy, pray. Give thanks to God. But he taught me that. And he taught me about hugging, you know, because I was very shy. And he'd say, give me a hug. Come on, give me a hug. And he taught me all about the hugging, that hugging is important, and that it helps people. It brings out love in them when you hug them. So he's like my mentor. I try to be like him. And with the healing, I'm the leader of the Light of Christ prayer group at St. Caterina of Siena. We meet every Monday night, 7:30 in the chapel of the Siena Center. All are welcome. I don't care if you're Catholic, you're not Catholic, you're welcome. There's one God. As long as you believe in God, you're welcome. And we share with each other about struggles that we're going through. We have Bible readings. Once a month I have a speaker that'll come in and give a presentation. So I feel honored to be the leader of the prayer group. But God takes the unequipped and he equips them, because believe me, my relatives, they would never, you know, I don't even see them, but they would never think that I would become a prayer group leader and speak for God, to bring people to God. They would never, but that's who God chooses, the people that you would never expect. He takes the lowly and he raises them up. So in God's eyes, I'm beautiful, but in the world's eyes, I really don't care anymore. There was a time that I always wanted people to affirm me and give me validation, but the only validation that I need is from God, my Father, my true Father. And John Palmer taught me that. He taught me a lot. But anyway, getting back to how we got the healing at St. Catherine's, John Palmer was in the Diocese of Rockville Center with our pastor, Monsignor Rick Figolosi, and they were back to back in the office, and they were very good friends. And John was always for healing. And down the road, we got Monsignor at our parish at St. Catherine's. And John said, go to him and ask him if you could do prayovers. I said, really? I don't even know him. And I was very nervous. He said, just go to him and tell him what you want to do. He said, everything will be fine. And we had our feast that summer, and it was his first time being in there. And I went up to him and I said, Father, would you consider doing prayovers after a mass at St. Catherine's? You know, and I said, I go to the 9. I would do it after that mass or whatever you want. And he's like, when can you start? Can you do it next week? So he was all on board for that. And since then, we've been doing prayovers at St. Catherine of Siena, Franklin Square, after the 9:30 mass. Now it's 9:30 mass for anybody who wants to be prayed with. Because people would wait for a healing mass, you know, for they say, when's the next healing mass? I need prayer. I need prayer. Now they could come once a week. Or with me, if you see me in the supermarket and you need prayer, I'll go in the corner, I'll pray. Because I believe you could pray anywhere. You could pray in a closet, in a corner of a room, in a hallway. It doesn't matter. God is there. You don't have to wait to be in a church or at a healing mass. But everybody needs prayer. And so many people are lost. So many people feel like they're never going to make it, that tomorrow's not going to be a better day. But when you have God and you have hope, you will have a better day, no matter what you have, no matter what you have. And I have a friend right now that was given 5 years to live. Her name is Francine. She has cancer. She's had cancer in different spots, but I keep telling her, and I hope you're listening, Francine, God is with you. And even though things seem bleak, and with your own eyes you see no answer, with God all things are possible. All things are possible. So I just thank you, Caterina, for inviting me. And anybody out there that needs help, God is your answer. Believe me, get down on your knees and ask for it, and God will give you whatever you need. Maybe not what you want, but he always gives us what we need. So thank you. Thank you.
I love that part. Not necessarily what we want,
I learned that.
but what we need. That was
That's true.
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was really awesome. I think it really brings to bear that, you know, the way, the reason the Lord uses people that have, and who hasn't really, but the reason he uses people that have responded to his healing themselves is because you have stories. These are our witnesses. These are our testimonies. You know, so often in counseling I hear very difficult stories that people tell me, and I always say to them, God's building your testimony. This is going to become your testimony. You know, what you're going through is really going to be what the Lord Lord uses to inspire everybody else. It's just amazing how that works. He qualifies the called,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
He qualifies
Yes.
the called.
Amen.
Now, you
Father-
talked about,
Father Peter, what,
Well, it's really an environment of faith that's going to help us, right? We should really be expecting some wonderful things coming out of St. Catherine's with the faith environment like we've been hearing about over here. See, here's the thing that Jesus wants to heal, but remember when he was in Nazareth there, that's a sad line, but then it's also a hopeful line, and he could do no mighty work there because of their lack of faith, remember, in his own, except to heal a few people on his way out. Okay, so in other words, they weren't looking, the unbelievers weren't looking, he laid a few quick hands. And so the Lord can work in adverse environments, but he prefers the royal road is to work in an environment of faith. When the men came with the paralyzed man that opened the roof, and let the paralyzed man down on his cot in front of Jesus seeing their faith, not the paralyzed man's faith, but their faith, the guys with the little ropes letting him down. It was their faith that Jesus responded to. So it's a very important thing to have that environment. We wonder why healings occur or why healings don't occur. I often think sometimes theologians and so forth, they question the healing ministry and so forth, or think it's just all psychological or something like that. So, but you'd say to yourself, well, what about the faculty lounge at such and such university? Do you ever pray over about anybody in the faculty lounge? Well, if they don't, no wonder they're not seeing any healing. Yeah. No wonder they're not experiencing anything like that, because they would have to stretch, beyond the intellectual to the experience of faith and to move in that faith. So I just wanted to mention those things. I'll get one other little thing too. It's an environment of faith. What does Naaman the Syrian say after he's healed? Now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel. Well, remember, they had notions of different gods that were powerful in different places. So what does Naaman ask? And it's a magnificent thing. He tries to give a gift to the prophet for his healing. The prophet won't accept it. He absolutely says, well, then please allow me to take 2 mule loads of earth from Israel back to Because what he's going to do in his own house back in Syria, he's going to spread that earth on the floor in a place. He's going to pray on that dirt as if he were in Israel. See, it's a little bit of a simple notion, but it's like you're holding on to a piece of that environment of faith. You see what I mean? It's holding on to that. We make pilgrimages and so forth. I mean, God can heal anywhere, but he uses different kind of signs. So it was a magnificent testimony to this man coming to acknowledge, the power of the God of Israel, because he wanted the earth from Israel back in his own country. It's a very interesting thing. So remember that the healing is a sign. Not everybody. You don't want to say this. Our humanity wants to say everybody should be, and everybody is touched by God. That you don't get what you want, but you get what you need. But on the other hand, there's signs when there's mighty works. There's signs that God is breaking, and we should be looking for more and other things too, about it. So it's really that God is moving. So we don't focus only on the one healing. We focus on all the kinds of things, and then the healings will pop up. They'll pop up when you least expect them. At least all of a sudden somebody you weren't even thinking about too much gets a healing. You know what I mean? And it's a sign, and we praise God for that.
I think the important thing too is that to always respect the mystery of the mind of Christ. The mystery.
The mystery of God.
We can't
Mystery
figure it
of
out.
God.
That's right.
Yeah. It's a challenge, because especially when people aren't healed the way we think they need to be healed.
That's right.
And I always think that probably the best healing prayer we can ever pray when someone is critically ill and maybe it looks like they have very little time left. Well, we want to pray a very powerful